Last thing I'd like to talk about is socialism. And it sounds so great. It would be so lovely. It would be so lovely if only it worked. And there's obviously so much that goes into it. So much. I'd like to start by saying that there have been concentrated efforts to brainwash you, no less than brainwash. Concentrated efforts. This is fact, not conspiracy. People have tried to brainwash you to become a socialist. Ever since a young age, and of course in college. Anyone in academia that is looking at it unbiased will tell you that it is a very socialist leftist place. And of course, this is where we are teaching the youth, and they go on to graduate and they'll get a degree in something that won't get them a job in the free market. And so they wind up in academia teaching the next generation of our youth that the world is unfair and it can be solved through socialism. And now the world is unfair, that I certainly agree with, and we do have inequality under capitalism, but socialism cannot fix it. It cannot. And you'll see inequality in both, or you'll see everyone being equally poor under socialism. We have devised a government from tyranny in which we knew that power corrupts, and in which we knew that eventually somebody bad will be in charge. And we created checks and balances. We have three systems of government. We have the Constitution, and yet we still have bad things happening from the government. We have given them more limited power. We've tried to bring things to a standstill at times so they can't rapidly consolidate their power and change things, and yet they keep getting it, and oftentimes they use it against us. And ironically, you'll find many people on the left, you'll find a large overlap between people who hate Donald Trump and find him as supremely evil and incompetent, but at the same time want to give the federal government power over their health care and power over welfare, and create this big brother government and give this power to these people that will inevitably be untrustworthy. Whether you don't like Donald Trump, whether you don't like Obama or Biden or George Bush or this guy or that guy, inevitably someone will come into power that you don't like. And then it's just a matter of how much power do they have. And on paper, the capitalist free market system seeks to limit this power. And of course, it's not true. In practice, all the time, this crony capitalism, in which the people who have succeeded in the capitalistic system, the capitalists, can then use their money to create rules and regulations and prop themselves up while making it harder for the little guy. Crony capitalism. This is observed. And of course, in an ideal form of capitalism, you have more laissez-faire, less regulations from the government, less rules. And so, of course, even though some of these rules may be good, some of them may be bad, eventually a bad person will come into power, and then they will have that power. Inequality is something that nobody likes, but we have to realize the inequality in America is awful, and yet our bottom line is still amazing. I would rather have $100,000 in a room full of millionaires than have $1 in a room full of people with $1. And unfortunately, this is what is observed in socialism. Socialism also has an idealized form and a crony form, in which the idealized form is the one that we all want to believe is true, and that we can solve all the world's problems and take care of everyone, and this system will work well. And then there is the system that is observed, and it is the crony socialism versus the crony capitalism. But what's unfortunate here is that these people in power, they don't just have this indirect means of money through the government that already has checks and balances and is meant to be limited small government, and they have this certainly influence, but it is a bit removed in crony capitalism. Yet in crony socialism, it is very centralized. They are very powerful people. We do see inequality in these systems because the capitalists type people, the powerful, influential, selfish, and not all capitalists are, but these crony capitalists, they also emerge in the socialist system. They just have so much more to do. And that's why all throughout history, if you look in China, if you look in Russia, if you look in Venezuela more recently, if you look in Cuba, if you look in any actual place where these things have been tried, it's been a disaster for those people. And there are just so many reasons. And majority of them are unforeseen. They're hard to predict. It's human nature. It's a very hard thing. And that's why it's so easy to believe in socialism. I have leaned that way before. It'd be great if we could take care of everyone, but there are so many unforeseen factors. For instance, incentives and ability. Okay, we know that if you feed an animal population, they may grow dependent and they will be unable to hunt for themselves, provide for themselves. Yet we don't see this principle as applying to humans, and unfortunately it does. If you give a man food, water, shelter, everything, he no longer has any reason to provide for himself. He doesn't learn these things. He doesn't gain the confidence in himself to do these things. He doesn't gain the skills to do these things. He doesn't have the will to do these things. And so unfortunately, you see welfare actually having a lot of adverse effects. And this can be seen as well in marriage statistics. We should all want to take care of a single mother. That's a good thing to want. But when we subsidize it on a federal level, we pay single mothers. There is a growing problem. Ever since these policies have been developed, men and women no longer need to stay married. They don't need each other as was intended, as is natural. Interplay between the two. And when they don't need each other, we have seen a huge spike in fatherless households in which the mom is the only one raising the child and she gets everything she needs through welfare, and it's disastrous for the children. It is absolutely disastrous for them, and it is a direct result of socialist policies. We are incentivizing single parenthood, which is a terrible. If you look at the statistics on who commits crime, people want to look at it by race, which is ridiculous. It's about income and it's about fatherhood, because you just look at the data. I mean, that's what it's about. We could love to say that it's about other things, but those are the problems, and we can say that there is a correlation between these welfares and single parenthood. I mean, even right now, we're in the midst of Corona, and they've been giving out great unemployment numbers. Okay, I know personally multiple people that have weaseled their way into getting unemployment and not working. And I don't blame them one bit. That's what they're incentivized to do. They're playing the game. They're not going to work. They can make more money from the federal government. And when everyone makes this decision, it's disastrous for the country. It's disastrous. These people aren't working when they could be. And okay, slowing the spread, yes, it's another matter. But the fact is, you have to realize that giving someone a safety net, that can be a good thing. You want people to feel free to go out and be adventurous, start jobs, and not scared that they'll, fall on their butt and end up homeless and worthless without it. Some sort of safety net could be good, but if you're totally incentivizing people, you can make more money staying at home. Why wouldn't they? And of course, this is terrible for the people as a whole, for society as a whole, when you have some good proportion of your able-bodied men not producing and adding value to society. And then you have to think about, what are they doing? Okay, well, I mean, Picture an inner city, food stamps, welfare, whether it's a white or a black community, it's just poor. And you've got a lot of working men that are just standing around doing nothing. And yes, you start to see spikes in violence. They don't have anything to do. A man naturally needs to provide. He needs to work. He needs to provide that value to give himself that esteem and character. And yet, if they're all just standing around, there's nothing that's good that really can happen from that. So, there's many aspects to it. We have the centralization of power and the fact that inevitably somebody evil will come into power. It's a matter of how much power will they have when that time comes. And I think our Constitution, as it is written, does a fantastic job of trying to limit that. It may need some alternatives, but it does a fantastic job. While socialism fails that front, and this has allowed Stalin and Mao and these communist leaders, socialist communists, similar but different, to kill millions. They killed millions and millions and millions of their own people because they had the power. And they brought everyone into poverty. Look at Venezuela, went into poverty. Okay. And then there's the fact that what you're trying to do is actually having the opposite effect of what you want to do. You're trying to help people. You're not helping people. You're making them worse. In fact, a lot of the times. And with that, one more. Yes, the single parents, single versus marriage. This is one aspect of the community breaking down and being replaced by the big brother government, but it happens all the time in general. And we're increasingly moving towards that. We don't go borrow sugar from our neighbor. We're not friendly with them anymore and think that we can go to them for anything. We ask the government for these things, and once the government has been providing it for us enough, that community is just no longer there. You've eroded it and replaced it with this impersonal giant entity, and this has similar problems as well. So actually, a lot of the time, capitalism says that, okay, everyone can act selfishly, and it works for the greater good, because if I'm a selfish guy and I just want to get rich, well, the best thing I can do is go start a business. And that means I have to make something you're willing to pay for. So by me wanting to get rich, I have to make something good enough that you would trade your working time, your wage, for that item, service, or product. So naturally, in the capitalist system, a selfish person, I'm not saying every business owner is selfish, but selfish people are incentivized to provide for the greater good. But where is that in socialism? If I'm a selfish person, what can I do actually to benefit myself? Well, I try and implant myself in the power structure, and I start using the central planning ability of the big brother government to benefit myself, me and my colleagues, me and my friends. Okay, and even in healthcare, okay, if we let the government decide all of our health care, who gets to decide what's what? I mean, controversial topic. Conservatives get in charge and they say the government's, we're not going to pay for a gender change of the transgenders. If that's something that you're passionate about, you're giving that decision to them. It's no longer up to, in the open market, if there's a demand for that, it's going to happen. There are going to be businesses pop up for that. But in the closed government system, they get to make all the decisions. And even if it's not malice, it's not evil people trying to benefit themselves, as stated earlier, it's just people with different opinion. What makes their opinion right? Why do they get to decide? You may like their opinion now and want them in charge of your health care because you trust this guy, but they're going to die. They're going to go out of office. The next guy's going to be in charge. Again, eventually somebody bad will be, and you better hope that they're not in charge of your health care. So, I mean, we could go into this all day, but obviously we see plenty of pro-socialist talk all the time, so I just wanted to give a counter opinion there.